Hola a todos. Here we are again. I'm in Mark Zuckerberg mode. Um, Let me see if I can help you with your questions. Okay? First, we have Pine and Gilmore, the four faces of mass customization, and question number one. Even though product inventories aren't kept when collaborative customization is used, don't companies have to keep components of inventories which contribute to cost? Hold on. Make sure I remember which is which. I'm not sure what part of this question. Collaborative inventories, you bet they have to keep inventory. Because think about Dell. Dell is a collaborative inventory, a collaborative mass customization expense. They have less inventory. They don't have inventory of finished goods, but they have inventory of assembled parts. I mean, think about in the video that I did in the articles video, and I was showing you the Moto X. They don't have finished inventory because finished inventory gets shipped out to the user that it was customized for, but they have supply inventory. So, yes, there still is a contribution to cost. But hopefully, Dell was able to keep their inventory on parts down substantially to the point where they only had about 12 days worth of inventory of parts on hand. They knew, based on historical precedent, how much demand they possibly could have and what components and what's most common. How do professional teams like the Mets customize ticket packages? And which categories do they fall under? Well, if you were to say the Mets, there's no change in the product. I don't know if this may be a customized ticket package, but I don't see it being cosmetic because the tickets all look the same. It's not really adaptive either because after sale, there's nothing for you to do with the tickets later. So I think we're getting a little confused here with the idea of mass customization and customized season ticket packages. Because the idea of mass customization is segments of one, and Mets season ticket packages are segments of many. It's more traditional marketing, like target marketing, where you have 3, 4, 5 different segments. You have a full package, you have a half-season package, you have a 10-game package, you have a 6-game package. You don't have everyone in the entire stadium coming up with their own packages. What is driving the recent interest in mass customization, and why is so much of it happening right now? I wish there was more interest than there is at the moment, and I'm not sure that so much of it is happening right now. I personally believe that we have the IT infrastructure and we have the social CRM database and all like that to finally make mass customization, more realistic, easier to do. The elicitation aspect of it, which is what came up in one of the articles that I talked about in the other video. But it's cheaper and easier to gauge demand if you do what Apple does and you make 1 or 2 different models and that's it. But there are situations where mass customization is better. I'm a runner. I would love for my shoes to be mass customized, and I wish I would pay, I'd be willing to pay double. Because my left foot's a different size than my right foot, and I would love to be able to have a shoe size Dano left foot, size Dano right foot. We haven't seen it that much. Nike does do the mass customization, but they do it more in a graphics design kind of a way, not in interior sizing kind of a way, which is what I would really like. How much of the current hype around mass customization is influenced by DIY and making the culture being on the rise in mainstream culture? Hold on one second. To go back to this question, how much of the current hype around mass customization is influenced by DIY and the making culture being on the rise in the mainstream culture? So when you're saying the making culture, I'm assuming you're talking about this kind of thing. MakerBot. I mean, I honestly believe this is one of the coolest things happening right now. MakerBot is actually headquartered in Brooklyn. They were just purchased by someone. But if you could see perhaps a video or two of what MakerBots do, let's do maps, news, more images, more videos. Amazing 3D printer. You know, let's see if we can do a couple seconds here.
A science fiction replicator to replicate tools. A tool on Earth all of a sudden appears in
a unique concoction not used anywhere else.
This is one of our three-dimensional printers. There's a print head inside this machine that ejects specific fluids for coloring different parts.
Yeah.
But we also have a print head for printing our binder materials to solidify the parts.
God, the powder is the paper and this binding stuff is the ink.
And then this tray here that it prints on will actually drop into the machine to give it that third dimension.
Okay, I would like to see that. Could you reproduce this branch?
Absolutely.
It has moving parts here.
Not a problem. First thing we need to do is scan it.
All right.
Take a look?
Yeah.
All right, so you get a flavor of some of the things of what these 3D printers can do. From metal, most of the time they print in plastic. Let's see if we get a better feel for what it looks like.
And the machine starts building. Ears, noses, fingers. Dr. Atala's goal is to transplant the parts directly into patients.
So we're actually testing a lot of these structures right now experimentally. The way it works is the cells...
Well, that's news to me. I didn't know they were 3D printing body parts, but if you want to talk about mass... Ooh, look at that.
Three-dimensional printing technology can be used to create masks and human figures made from chocolates, but it can also help people to get a new life. Eric Moger worked as a restaurant manager and had a happy life with his fiancée before doctors found a tumor the size of a tennis ball growing on his face. After the discovery, his wedding plans were cancelled. He immediately received cancer treatment.
Seeing if they're showing the printer.
Have developed from 2D to 3D since the 80s. Nowadays, 3D printing is widely used in the medical field, such as...
Alright, I think that's enough for this, so you guys get a flavor of what the heck we're talking about here. But, you know, if we have the social CRM data, if we have the 3D printers, we can do mass customization. I mean, think about how many trinkets that you have in your house, light switches. You know, you want a customized template down from the internet, you know, you pull down a template, you put that template into your 3D printer that's sitting in your garage, and you have a new customized light switch that you can use inside your house. It's happening. It's happening right now. Who are some of the first early movers in mass customization? Well, I think we should talk about the ones that are now. And MakerBot's certainly one of them, but there's a handful of 3D printer companies out there that are doing both in metal, in plastic, in wax, in paper. But my poster child was Dell. And Nike right now is kind of on the forefront. They're still doing it. And so is Motorola. But there's been a lot of disasters in the mass customization movement, particularly Levi's. Levi's wanted to make mass customization jeans. There was a couple shoe manufacturers that tried to do mass customization shoes, but really, to scale it up, it didn't work out. With the Levi's scenario, no one wanted to go into the machine and get their body scanned because they thought it was intrusive. So the 4 phases of mass customization are like leadership types. They operate best when they're combined together. You know, I think another way to say this question is, are these 4 mutually exclusive? Meaning, by being one, you can't possibly do the other. Well, depending on the product, you might be able to do all 4. But Dell couldn't do all 4 when Dell was in its prime. Nike does only collaborative and adaptive. Motorola, in that plant, only does collaborative. I don't think they're doing any transparent at all. You know, it depends. I think this is more specific type. Specific to the firm and the product. I think some of these are mutual exclusive. I don't know if we can really combine them together. When do companies know that it's time to draw the line and they can only customize to some extent? Well, it comes down to cost. You know, supply, demand, and cost. When Dell was in its prime, Dell had the ability to do it because computers were still getting a premium. They weren't commoditized. But as soon as the product became commoditized and there was all these cheaper standard one, people were not giving Dell a look anymore. Plus, Dell tried to do other things to mess up their balance sheet, which is another case study. But if usually mass customization products command a premium, and you have to be able to be in a marketplace that you can sustain your business in this premium. You have enough volume, you have a big enough marketplace to be able to sustain itself. That's usually the problem. A while ago, and this was a while ago, this is more than 10 years ago, Toyota talked about building the 5-day Camry, where you would go into a car dealership on Monday and the Camry would be delivered to your house on Friday to your specs. Camrys are made in Kentucky, which is almost the center of the country, roughly speaking. A little bit more towards the East Coast side. But, 18 hours to manufacture, 24 hours to ship, maybe 48 hours to ship. So you order on Monday, manufactured on Tuesday, ships on Wednesday and Thursday, shows up on Friday. They talked about it, they spec'd it out, and eventually they decided against doing it because the economy went into a recession at the time, and they never pursued it again. But they were talking about it. Have companies ever provided so many customization opportunities that leads to adverse results? Yeah. Some of us are going to do the Paradox of Choice book. If you have too many options, you have cognitive shutdown, and people end up not picking anything. So not all products are a good fit for mass customization. There's some companies that there's just too many variables. There's too much customization from the manufacturing operation side to make it work. Questions. How does mass customization change the traditional concept of consumption? Well, I think it changes the buying side in the overall consumption milieu or process. Because when how you order it, a lot of mass customization products you don't go to a store to do. You do it online, or you do it through the phone, or you do it through some kind of a situation like that, and it's delivered to the home. There's no showroom kind of a scenario. So that's a very radical change. Does crowdsourcing count as mass customization? Explicitly, no. But the concept of the crowd and the concept of bottom up and the concept of the long tail, in the long tail, which a lot of, the mass market is the blockbusters, and that's the head of the curve. The long tail of the curve, now that we have unlimited selection due to the internet, that's where lots of customizations and personalizations and more one-to-one marketplaces or very small marketplaces exist. So they're on the same wavelength, but they're not exactly mass customization. It's sort of like mass customization is an operations thing and crowdsourcing is a marketing thing. They could work together, but they don't replace each other. Apple appears to have been trying to increase their mass customization with the 5C. Do you agree with this statement, and was it successful? I can't say that I've seen a lot of people walking around with those bright new colors. How is a product such as Moto X performing, which is highly customizable phone? Well, I would say that the 5C is outselling the Moto X because the Moto X has extremely small numbers. I think they're making 100,000 a month or something like that. You can Google the exact number, but I've had students who are interested in the Moto X, and it's like a 8-week waiting period to get your phone, which is really a bummer. It should be like a 1-week waiting period to get your phone. That said, the iPhone 5S is selling extremely well, much more than people anticipated. At the moment, the 5C is not selling well at all. And I don't know if I would say that Apple is mass customizing, because all they did was add 5 colors and add 5 cases. So there's some permutations, but there's really not that much customization there at all. Do you agree? It's, if anything, it's adaptive, really. Where you're just changing a case. You're adding a case to it with a different color profile. Was it successful? The 5C is going to be successful over time. I mean, through the course of the year, the iPhone 4 and 4S outsold the iPhone 5 last year. But in the first 3 months that the iPhone 5, first 3, 4, 5 months that the iPhone 5 was out, the iPhone 5 outsold. It was the dominant player. And so right now, we have a brand new phone. Everybody wants the new tech, at least the early adopters, the innovative type individuals. They have the 5S. And 5Ss, once they lock into their 2-year contract, guess what? A lot of people buy the 5S right away because they want the new thing, they want the new technology. But then the number of people that buy the 5S is going to probably continue to drop throughout the year until about 6 to 8 months outside of initial launch. The sales will be quite small. But the 5C, with it being only $99, that's probably going to have a small but very steady number over time. Each month, about the same number of people are going to buy the 5C. Why? Because they want a phone, and they come in and they buy a cheaper option. They don't care about the technology as much. Okay, second article. The limits of mass customization. This article is rather old. I see that comment a lot from you guys. And it doesn't really discuss the future of mass customization within the publishing industry. Content seems to be one of the easiest products to customize. Was this an area that failed to get a lot of attention in early 2000? It seems so, as we see a lot of traditional publishers struggling to change with the demand of its subscribers. Well, it's not just publishing as in books and magazines. It's also publishing, media in general. The television and movie industry still has not modified itself. We're starting to see the magazine industry and the newspaper industry getting blown up. And the book industry has not come around yet because they haven't had to. They are doing different things with a lot of e-books. There was a lot of talk around this time that wasn't talked in the article about print-on-demand books. So books would be created, and there'd be only a small initial print run of 2,000, and they would send those out to the bookstores. But everything else, the bookstore, a small independent bookstore, would just have a printer. And any book you wanted could be printed in about 30 minutes or less. You have a little binding machine, done. That was very expensive. That it did not completely take off the way you would think it would. In the education side, there's a ton of mass customization with textbooks. I can create my own textbook with different chapters from about 20 or 30 different other textbooks. I could have created a packet from Harvard Business Review for you guys instead of you going to the library the way you're doing. It was cheaper for you to do what you're doing, by the way. But yes, I could have did a lot of mass customization, with regards to the education side of the book publishing area. There's a lot of mass customization happening. That's pretty easy to do. I hope that answers your question. It would seem that the elicitation of customer requirement is getting even easier as companies like Facebook, Google, Twitter capture more and more customer information. Do you think there will be a tipping point where all the elements come together and make it really easy to customize products? And this will be a disruptive business approach within many industries. I certainly see more of this. Okay, I would agree with this statement. I would agree that the Googles of the world and the Facebooks of the world and the Twitters of the world, they do, the Axioms of the world, they know more about us than we really think that they do know. They have the ability to customize recommendations to us. What's the difference between customizing a recommendation and saying, well, what about this product? Why don't you think about that? Or this vacation? Why don't you think about that? Given that you like this kind of activity and this kind of activity and this kind of activity, what do you think about that? They're called recommendation engines. They're very common, and guess what? We're going to see more and more of it. I think the MakerBot 3D printers, which is the absolute bleeding edge of where we're at the moment, can you imagine if everyone in the United States, or at least, just like we have a car, you also have a printer in your garage. And half of the things that you go and buy at the dollar store or Lowe's or Home Depot, guess what? You can just print your own copy of it. You can go to like an Amazon that has 2.5 million different templates that you can download a program for $1, like an app. For 99 cents, you can get this app, you put it on your computer, and all of a sudden you can print all kinds of little things that you use in your house. Think of how much little things that you buy that's plastic, that you buy and it's basically just plastic. Kids' toys. Be awesome. Demand for customization, moreover, is limited and remains likely to be so. Why? What is the basis from this statement? Well, what happens is that it's harder to find a segment of one. And think about when this article was written. They didn't have the data and the databases and the learning mechanisms to learn about a segment of one. Netflix can do it now, eBay can do it now, Amazon can do it now, but no one could do it in 2000. Well, this article was 2001-ish, which means it was written in 99 and 2000 and published in 2001. So, now, yeah. With the logistic issues that come with mass customization, should marketing departments avoid the conversation about it until all the issues are resolved and figured out? I think the logistic issues in the article, we're also past those. FedEx, UPS, or even the UP, the United States Postal Service, USPS, is significantly better logistics-wise for mass customization stuff to happen. I don't think the logistic issues are really there. And the technology is better at routing customer information with products to the point where you have totally digitized, roboticized warehouses that human hands never touch a thing and it still gets shipped to your house. It's kind of neat. Besides the options the author cites, sorry about that. Besides the options the author cites, are there other alternatives to mass customization? No, there's instead of there's mass production and there's mass customization. And, in the Four Faces, the first article, we saw some, limited customization where you standardize the product and everything happens after. So you could do a continuum from complete mass customizations where every product is completely individualized all the way to mass production where nothing is individualized. Kind of continue from there. A continuum. If a company has a strong CRM system in place, will this inevitably lead them to mass customization? Well, the answer to this question is no, the way it's written. If they have a strong CRM system in place, it will be easier for them to go to mass customization. But they might have a product that doesn't lend itself to, there's not enough differences amongst individual users that it needs to be customized for each individual person. It just doesn't, it's not the case. Regardless of whether they have a strong CRM system or not. It's product and consumer behavior driven. With mass customization being so difficult to understand and master, are most companies better off avoiding it? Again, it depends. I don't think you should do it just for the sake of doing it. I think you should do it if you can give yourself a competitive advantage over your competition. Like, if you would take a look at the Motorola situation, this Moto X, it's neat, it's cool, I like it. But is that enough of a competitive advantage given what, Apple's doing, what Samsung's doing? No, because it's still the same software that's being used in every other phone. There's nothing, all the customization is cosmetic customization. Apple just bought a plant in Arizona that used to be a solar plant. They're now going to start manufacturing sapphire lenses that you can make curved, which I don't know what the heck they're going to do with all this stuff. But sapphire crystal is 3 to 4 times as strong as the crystal on this thing. And this is Gorilla Glass, and this is really good, by the way. Gorilla Glass is strong. But sapphire? Ooh. Drop it, won't break. Unscratchable. So, the competition is doing other things to create value for the consumer. And Motorola is just doing it in a cosmetic kind of a way. I don't think that's going to be enough given what its competition is doing and given what's happening in the marketplace. What are some industries where mass customization is not happening right now, but could be in the next few years? I'm going to keep coming back to this MakerBot printer scenario. And it would blow up a lot of industries. It really would. It really could. It really could. When you get a chance, go to YouTube and watch a video or two. It's really cool. As a matter of fact, I think I have 1 or 2 on my blog that I'll send you. It's really cool. Are there statistics that detail how much extra money consumers are willing to pay for mass customization, i.e. how much higher the margins despite the increased cost? No, there's none that I know of, to be honest with you. And we know it's a premium, but we don't know what the premium is or will be. And I got a feeling it's also a function of, how innovative the category is, how expensive the category in the mass production products are, In your opinion, where did Dell go wrong in spite of its mass customizations efforts? Oh boy. Alright. Let me give you a couple bullets, and I've been dancing around this in the last 2 videos, so I might as well give you something. The first thing that Dell did wrong is they became less market oriented. They lost track of their competition, and they really got eaten out from below. That was one of their problems. One of their other problems is Michael Dell got fixated with Wall Street, and he started doing all kinds of things to Dell to make the balance sheet look better. I think he did it for like 9 to 12 quarters in a row, just so the balance sheet would look better. All these short-term little things. One of the killers that Dell did is Dell had, this was pre-internet by the way, in Round Rock, Texas, one of the most incredible inbound telemarketing centers on the planet. These salespeople would, because remember, Dell was all catalog at the time. The only way for you to get a Dell is for you to call a 1-800 number. This was pre-internet. And when you called someone, you had to have really good people on the other line. So not only was the sales center really strong, but the after-sales service and the troubleshooting, Dell had the Genius Bar before Apple did. One of the reasons why people loved Dell is because if you had a problem, you just called them and they walked you through it. They got rid of the sales center in Texas. They outsourced the service side to India, and everybody got really upset with Dell. You know. And then they didn't invest in anything. You know, they didn't really... All their competitors started doing better, more interesting designs, and having more interesting hardware and everything going into the computers, and Dell also did not keep up. What would be the impact of mass customizations for developing countries like Brazil, India, or Brazil, China, India? Are we more or less prepared to seize its benefits? I think we're more prepared to seize its benefits. I think that, you know, the robotics that we have in manufacturing and the 3D printers, all this 3D, to the best of my knowledge, all this 3D printer technology are U.S. companies, to the best of my knowledge. I'm not sure anyone else is really doing this stuff now. Okay, next article. Maximizing customer value via mass customized e-services. This is the academic-y one. How has mass customization evolved since this article was written? I think I've answered this question previously up top. It's the same answer. What is the role of a salesperson in e-customization? The salesperson is more about listening, empathy, and walking someone through all the decision points so the buyer makes the best decision for them. The salesperson becomes more of a consultant, more of a teacher, as opposed to a salesperson. Their main goal is to be helpful. Answer questions. What are some of the current challenges e-sellers are having? Well, they don't know what to customize. They don't know where their markets are. They don't know whether they should go after individual one-to-one or they should go after groups of customers. There's lots of questions along those lines. Aren't all the recommendations for cross-e-tailing the same best practices as any selling process? You know, I'm going to agree with you more here. And I actually said this in the last video. That many of the cross-e-tailing are the same cross-selling things that we were talking about in the e-commerce articles or I talk in my professional selling class. But the only way you can cross-sell, upsell, or bundle is if you have the CRM data. If you don't have that CRM stuff that we talked about way back when, a couple weeks ago, then you can't do the upselling, the cross-selling, the recommendation type things because you don't know enough about your customer base. CSS helps to replace salespeople by creating pull instead of push, is what this question should say. Which department within the organization normally takes control of the CSS? Well, in good market-oriented fashion, it's not a department or a silo. It's got to be some function of IT, marketing, and possibly operations and management. Because the marketing operations aspect, you know, are needed in order for the customer to have it. you have this pull coming through. It's not the traditional marketing department. It's not the traditional operations department. Isn't it dangerous or taking too much power away from the consumer in terms of pricing? I'm not sure. I'm trying to think here. Isn't this dangerous or taking too much power away from the consumer in terms of pricing? I mean, the axiom of pricing is you price what the market will bear. Consumers expect to pay more if they get more. If they're getting more in terms of customization, I don't see them having a problem paying for the higher price and the premium. Is it dangerous taking too much power away from the consumer? I'm not quite sure what you're asking here. If you have more that you want to probe about this, shoot me an email. What does the future of mass customization look like? What themes will be emphasized in the future, both in practice and research? Are there any other trends? I think I've got to this question a couple times now. I keep circling back. What are some of the specific enabling technologies that have created consumption value in the past few years? Well, the fact that we have recommendations engines, the fact that we have, it's very cheap to store all this data, collect this data, the fact that we're collecting so much more because everybody's gone mobile, the fact that we now have this 3D printer thing, that we have a culture of individuals that are used to doing things on their own in the long tail. You have empowered consumers that don't have a problem voicing their opinion, which lends them more to mass customization. You have a lot of cultural and technology forces today that weren't here 10 years ago. Enabling technologies and enabling culture, I would say. There are currently a lot of cross-e-tailing campaigns that have been successful. There's tons of them. Too many to number. I mean, how many times did you go to Amazon to buy a book and you ended up buying more than one book? Very simple. How does the consumer experience between a custom retailer and a normal retailer differ? Well, I think the better question here is we're starting to see the normal retailer and the custom retailer and the online retailer become the same retailer. You have to, the very smart retailer these days are going to the consumer where the consumer is. Whether they come in and buy off the rack, whether you can buy customization, or whether you need to do digital. And Nike is really the best example of this. Nike's creating digital products, they're creating mass-produced products, and mass-customized products. Why shouldn't they? They're a very market-oriented company. Is there as much communication between the consumer as the retailer as there used to be? There's way, 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 way more. Retailers know more about us than they've ever done before. Or is social media the new form of word of mouth dominating the need for direct communication between the two parties? Well, you could talk about it as direct and indirect. I would say the social media chatter out there, retailers are doing social media monitoring, would be the indirect route. And the direct route would be more through the channels of the retailer and through loyalty card type stuff. And their purchasing and transaction type things. We're going to see, right now, retailers, and we saw this in our previous retailing article, retailers are only getting data on actual purchase, physical retailers, where a company like Amazon gets all kinds of data from you even if you don't purchase. They know what you've clicked, they know what you've done, and that kind of thing. Is there much communication as it used to be? Alright. our last one-pager, which I'm sure was your most favorite article of the whole year because it was so short. How big a role does social media play in the introduction of mass customization? In the introduction of mass customization, 0. Because mass customization predates social media. I think social media and data itself, big data, I see us skewing back in the direction of mass customization. I think it's easier to happen now than it had in the past. Has there ever been a sharp increase in DIY-type store service when companies started to focus on mass customization? Has there been a sharp increase? Usually what happens is in most marketplaces, it starts off as a DIY type, and then it gets to a mass production type scenario. After the marketplace gets big enough for a larger audience, then guess what? You start getting mass kind of things. I think a very good example of this is, in the hobby marketplace, radio-controlled airplanes and all that stuff really was a DIY type scenario. But now you can go into Brookstone and get like these little helicopters that does all this stuff, and you can get hovercrafts and all these kind of mass-produced products that used to be just DIY type stuff. If the experiment conducted with women was done on men with more male-related items, the results have been different. Does the feedback affect men's decision as much as it does for women? Well, if we look at Experiment 1 wasn't all women, was it? Experiment 1 didn't say it was all women. Only Experiment 2 was all women. And we saw the same effect in Experiment 1 and Experiment 2, basically. So, how has social media increased the amount of customization people are wanting for various products nowadays? I think social media, with this viral word of mouth that we have, you can create smaller sections, subsects, subgroups of one. You have, with social media, it's easier to market to a smaller and smaller to the individual level. Without social/digital big data, I don't think we could have do that efficiently as we can do now. What types of products would be best suited for this type of media sharing? We've asked this question a number of times here, and it's really context specific. How can radio frequency identification, which is what RFID stand for, come to play for mass customization? Well, RFID in retailing, which we were hoping to see it in retailing, can help with acquiring more data than a UPC code can. The other thing, a UPC code can't tell you spatial and movement. A radio frequency ID tag can see how a product moves through the store, what a consumer does with it, how much time they hold it. It can give you more and a richer data stream, which, depending on the product and depending on the context, might help in mass customization scenarios. What do you feel is the future of mass customization? For example, what can Dell do next, if anything, via its web interface? Well, I don't think Dell's a mass customizer anymore. As a matter of fact, Dell is just recently gone from public to private. I think they're getting completely out of the consumer side of things. I'm going to be more of a B2B type firm. At least that's what all the chatter is. So I really don't know how to answer this question. Excuse me. This is only one study about one product. Are there other resources or studies available on the subject that you recommend? Well, there has to be other studies that look at how consumers are influenced by their peer group, whether it's in an electronic digital context or not. I'm not familiar with any of them off the top of my head. This isn't one of my main areas of study, but I guarantee there are studies along those lines. What else would I look at? Let me think about this for a second. The other thing I would look at is, there's an awful lot of research about word of mouth and how consumers find out about products. And finding out about products would be almost as useful with this mass customization kind of a thing. Couldn't social media sharing also serve as word of mouth marketing and help sales? Well, yeah, it does now, and I would agree with this statement wholeheartedly. There's no controversy there. It almost seems that when DIY goes to the crowd, that they're getting a large focus group to evaluate their creations. Are companies incorporating this data for mass production, creating a cycle? It almost seems that well, in large DIY type scenarios, we know that companies go back to the crowd for innovation. This is exactly what Harley was talking about when we did the Harley Davidson type article earlier in the semester. So they're using this type of customization, after sales customization, to then go into mass production. I believe this is the question that you were asking here. Our last two questions. If companies are encouraging it but not demanding it, why does it matter if a customer chooses to share on social media or not? Sounds as though it's their decision, not something that is forced upon them. Well, I think the companies are encouraging it because if they share on social media, the companies, through social media listening, get to hear it and get to learn. And if they don't share on social media and do it through other means that's not trackable by the company doesn't get any learning out of it. So they recommend, they asked, tweet this, do this, paste it on Facebook, go to our page, because they want to be able to track. They want more information. Hopefully that is the case from the company's perspective. This seems to be less of a social media conversation and more of a psychological conversation. Is peer pressure strong over social media channels? And the answer to that is definitely yes. Well, there's no question that peer pressure is a component to social media. I mean, you look to see what people are doing in social and you emulate it. Almost the same way we emulate stuff in non-social situations. So, yes, we talked earlier in the semester, all roads lead to Rome, and I say all things lead to the brain. Well, all things lead to the brain, and what are we doing it with regards to a social electronic scenario? Okay, longer video, but it's just all in one shot. There was only 4 articles. I thank you for your time. I thank you for your energy. Have a good one.